Discover how smarter project insights can lead to better project outcomes.
Hello, project people. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Project Chatter podcast. It's always good to have you with us. And I'm joined by a full house tonight, which is great. Mr. Dale, how are you from Germany?
I'm good, thank you. It's good to be abroad for a change. Yeah. How are you doing in Australia?
Cannot complain now that all the restrictions are easing. And I feel like freedom is back once again, just in time for winter. Awesome. We also have Mr. Martin Kirsten is here. How are you, Martin Kirsten?
Yeah, good, thanks. And yourself?
I had to give the full name. I feel like I was telling you off, but it's because we've got two Martins on the show today, so I didn't want it to be rude. Good to have you here, mate. And our guest who is returning, a veteran of the podcast, a man of the data, Mr. Martin Paver. How are you, sir?
Yeah, very good indeed. Yes, very good. Thanks, Val.
Well, it's good to have you back, and I'm sorry to pull you away from the pub. I think it's important that we talk about data, and I know this is the only subject matter you would actually leave the pub for anyway. It is so good to see your face. You're always happy when we see you, so I love having happy guests. But what's been happening? I know we're talking about Project Hack, but you are always making leaps and strides. And I've watched a few of your your hackathons, and I'm just watching in just incredible admiration for what you're doing for the data community. What's a bit of a synopsis of what's been a year since we last had you on the pod?
Yeah. It's been a tough gig, Val. It's been a tough gig because, there's a lot going on. And I think sort of part of the challenge at the moment is there's still a lot of project data people out there, sort of project professionals out there who don't understand that they work in the world of data. They think in terms of Prince 2 terms and APM and PMI terms. So in terms of project controls, their full-time job is managing data, but they don't see it as data. They see it as things like P6. They see it as risk management systems and cost control. Underpinning all that is data, but they're still not getting it. They're still not getting it. And there's some people, so through the apprenticeship, we're finding people now starting to emerge who are starting to get these new superpowers, but it's a tough gig in terms of convincing everybody that this is the way to go. And I'm absolutely convinced now. I think you are, I think Dale is. I'm not sure about the other Martin, right? So we'll find out in a minute. I probably think, in the next 3 or 4 months, we will get that inflection point. It's coming at pace, and I'll tell you some exciting news in a bit.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think you're right. I think as well, maybe it's the logical levels of understanding, but people don't necessarily go back to first principles. I think data is kind of the river, right? It's the flow of information, but it hasn't necessarily got the contextual meaning. And I think people try and understand what their role is. And I guess they've been indoctrinated by some of these institutions to believe a certain way, and projects only run a certain way. But you and I know both that it is a bit like a river. I think Dr. Dan Patterson was on. He had a really clever way of saying it. I think he was like taming the river. Tamification, I think he said, Dale and Martin, and I think that's a bit right. It's a bit like steerage. You're just trying to figure out how to just get it around the corner. But data is a big issue, and it's not necessarily contained to UK either, Martin. We know that in every country potentially that the same issues are applying. I think in Australia, I can speak on behalf, it is very difficult to see this happening, and I think it's around the value of data. It's still not quite there. And I hope that people who are listening who haven't heard of the hackathons or Project Hack that your team is doing in the UK checks it out, because you are making it open and free at the moment. You can see these things online on YouTube. Is that right, Martin? Is that going to stay like that?
It's bigger than that, Val. Right. So we've got a movement going now. Right. So there's 9,000 people in the Project Data Analytics community movement. Right. So what the hypothesis is that if you think about the body of knowledge, right, the body of knowledge has come from a load of people's experience, and it's saying that this is the next stepping stones in terms of project delivery, right? So it keeps on being refined and refined and refined, but it's not necessarily evidence-based, right? We haven't got the data to back up all that theory and all that body of knowledge. So if we think about risk management, for instance, it's this human process of guessing what's going to go wrong next on a project. Now, that's a shocking state of affairs in 2022. So if we can start to use all of that experience that's gone before and the data that underpins it, we can start to make some evidence-based decisions, and we can temper it with human knowledge, but we shouldn't be starting from a blank sheet of paper guessing. And all those guesses are laden with human bias, right? It's just not the way we should be going. So I do see that we're getting a pivot point, right? And it's coming.
Mm. No, that's well said, mate. I think you're right. I love the "it's coming." Maybe that's another show that we can do. Have a countdown clock. Because I'm still waiting. You know. You sorry?
So some of the stuff we're doing at the moment, right? So if you imagine, so we've had 14 hackathons, right, over the past 3 years or so, right? 14 hackathons, and that's brought together thousands of people to solve project delivery problems. But the problem is, right, we go and solve a point problem, right, a point solution, and we come up and we fix something on health and safety. We created a machine learning algorithm that addressed Baker Hughes's problem with project delivery data on Christmas trees, for instance, right? So not Christmas trees in terms of Father Christmas, it's more Christmas trees in terms of oil and gas. And those Christmas trees, they've got a repeatable process, and they said, can we use advanced data analytics to predict which part of a project is likely to be subject to most variance, right? Which means you can go and intervene at an appropriate point in the process. People were solving that in 2 days, but the problem is, who's picking that up and doing something with it, right? So it's the adoption process. People come along, they have a great couple of days, you know, we have a free bar in the evening, they win £5,000 between them, right? It's a great experience, but we need to flip the dial on it. So what we're doing now is we're working with the Project Data Analytics Task Force, and that task force is saying, let's create some theme-based visions for each of our swim lanes of project delivery, right? So there's the P3M swim lane, so there's risk and schedule and benefits management, etc. And then there's swim lanes associated with health and safety and design management and logistics. And then there's some cross-cutting ones associated with things like productivity, for instance, right? So if we can think, what does the vision look like for 2025, right? And that's 3 years away. So what could that vision look like? If we could write a book that says, where do we want to be in 3 years' time? So we can get a few of us together and say, what would we envisage data-driven benefits management look like in 3 years' time? So if we can set that vision and then reverse engineer from there and say, right, there's probably 10 modules to get us there. If we could then use the hackathon community to work through those modules, that means we then start to create solutions through the community so we can start to drive that growth. Mm-hmm. If we can open source those solutions, so most of this is about the configuration of the Microsoft environment in the main, because that's what most people use. You bring in Python, you can use some other sort of applications associated with it, but it's about configuration. It's not about the creation of new algorithms that is going to look at this data in a new way, right? We're in basic land at the moment, right? The M-plan stuff's really top end, and that's great where you've got a huge amount of data, but most organizations at the moment have got shoddy data, right? The data is not good enough to solve the use cases. So if we can do all of that and start to open source some of these products, that then drives up the data volumes. When we drive up the data volumes, we drive up data quality as well, because everybody's using a similar environment. So a similar taxonomy and the ontology that underpins it in terms of the data model. If we do all of that, that's when we move the dial, right? So once we've got the data volumes pumping up, that's when we can move into the clever stuff. And that's where your nodes and links and your M-plans, everybody else comes in. And that's where these really clever guys should be playing. Like, they shouldn't be playing in the simple, you know, Power BI and Power Apps space. They should be playing in the PhD level, you know, where I've got loads of data, and not just a single data frame, right? It shouldn't be about schedules or it shouldn't be about risk management. It's the interaction between some of these So the interaction between risk and schedule and design management, compensation events, whatever. Once we've got all of that, it's integrated together, that's when we make the difference.
I couldn't believe, I couldn't not believe you more. I'm so on board with this. And I think we talked about this last time you were here, long time, Martin, when things were simpler. That's data trust and, you know, a bit of the challenge of wrangling or convincing perhaps people to not share, but open up.
Lost you, Val?
Yeah, I think we've lost you, Val. So just check your connection there.
Or can you think of move on data trusts and open source data for all projects?
So I'll pick the end of that up, Val. I think you're breaking up. So in terms of data trust, right, we've got the first one going in the world, groundbreaking stuff on the construction data trust, right? So what we're trying to do, so we pitched this into government, I think 4 times in total into innovation funds, and it was always knocked back. And it was knocked back, and they said, too big, too bold, too aspirational, and industry is never going to share data of that type, right? So I reached out to a chap called Grant Finlay in Sir Robert McAlpine and Gareth Parks from Sir Robert McAlpine, and we pump around it, right? We got something going. I put some money in, they put some money in, and we got it going. So we got a data trust, and then we worked with a company called BPE, who is a legal advisor working in the STEM world, and we've got a data trust going, right? So we've mobilized it. So it's now got Mace on board, so they sit on the data trust board, and it's also got a really fantastic lady called Dr. Jo Jolly, who needs to be on your podcast these days. So she's a board director, and interestingly, she's a Crown servant, right? She works for the Environment Agency. So Construction Data Limited, which is the legal vehicle in which the data trust sits, is a not-for-profit entity, right? It's a limited company, but its mandate and its articles of association say that it's a not-for-profit entity. So the board directors are Mace, Sir Robert McAlpine, and the Environment Agency at the moment, plus this legal sort of organisation. And in due course, there's more and more going to come on board. And there's another one, I can't announce it yet, but you know, I think it's going to be a bit of a game changer. And it will really start to put a lot of momentum into it. So that legal vehicle is now in place. So it's reached out to something called it's the Construction Productivity Task Force, which is the chief execs for Mace, Skanska, Sir Robert McAlpine, British Land, Lendlease, etc. And they've said, let's work together so we can start to pull data to solve productivity problems, right? So the first time ever, right, they can't share that data because if they do, they go to jail because of collusion. Right? You can't share cost data with each other. You're not allowed to, but you can put it into a data trust which is independently stewarded. So Projecting Success, so the company I work for, is the independent data steward for that arrangement. So we bring that data in through data pipelines, we then pull that data, reflect the insights back, etc. So once we start to get going with it, we can provide third-party access to that data, and that gives people like Nodes and Links and NPlan and universities, whatever, access to that data subject to terms of use agreements, right? So conceptually, right, if you've got the right agreements in place, a university can see everything, a competitor can only see the aggregated and anonymized data. So we layer the data based around the risk. So that is now in place. And I've got some breaking news in about 2 or 3 weeks' time, where there's going to be another one, which will be pooling data on £50 billion worth of projects. But it's not quite baked yet, so I want to wait till I get the contract. But I've signed the contract the other parties now need to sign. So it's nearly there. And that's groundbreaking, right? Really, really groundbreaking. So these are world firsts. So just imagine a situation when we start to pull this data, starts to drive up the data volumes, but it's not just about pooling data. What we can do, which is really cool, is we take that data in and we can look at the data and its alignment with the problem statements we're trying to solve. And most of the time it's misaligned, right? We're capturing data at the moment because that's what the process tells us to do. And that process is probably a digitized form from the 1980s. So we're creating stuff in terms of data because that's what the process machine tells us to do, and that's what the body of knowledge tells us to do. We haven't actually done a data mapping and a gap analysis between the problems we're trying to solve and the data we've currently got, and work out what we need to do to fix all that. So it's massive, massive.
So,
I'm muted.
I think Val's struggling there with his mic a bit. I'll jump in there, Martin. So if we just rewind a little bit and go back into the actual hackathons, because you covered, it's over 2 days. You know, you throw individual strands of challenges at the various teams, and as you say, so they sort of solve single points. For those that have never come across the hackathons, what if you go into detail does it entail? What does day one look like? What does day two look like? Is it just you throw a challenge to the teams, they pick one and you let them go for 2 days? Are there sort of bits in between weaved in? What would one experience if they attended a hackathon?
So in terms of hackathons, right, a lot of people think it's a load of people who's working on the dark web and you go and try and hack into Russia and bring down the state. Right? That's a concept of a hack, right? So in terms of a hackathon, it's a different thing. It's where you bring people together to solve problems at pace, and some of those problems are solved with a minimum viable product. So something that's it's conceptual, it works, but it's not fully productionized. You can't just go and turn it on and take it back to your organization. So the way we work in terms of these hacks, we put out a load of challenges, right? So we've got two sorts of hackathons. We've got an online hackathon, we've got a physical hackathon. We alternate them at the moment just because it's a lot of effort to put these things on. And a lot of money as well, right? So putting on a hack. Our next one is at the Spurs Stadium, so a brand new football stadium. We're renting part of it out. We have over 300 people. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. So it brings those people together. So what we do about a week before, we publish the challenges, right? So those challenges is us working with people like you, for instance, Dale, working with the Environment Agency, working with the MOD, working with Mace and Sir Robert McAlpine, whatever. We pulled together these challenges. Now, previously, they've been a bit random, right? So what I want to do is start to align them with these visions for 2025. So if we can sprint through each of these bits of the roadmap in 2025, we'll have solved the puzzle for benefits management, we'll have solved the puzzle for risk management, we'll have solved the puzzle for this, and then the data volumes grow, and then Emplan can come in, pick that data up and do some really clever stuff with it, right? So that's the concept behind it. So the way it works is we publish those challenges, we put some data out there as well. So that's all published for the people who signed up. So they'll see that a week before. Some people would start some work before, some people don't, right? So we start the session at 9 o'clock on the first day. It used to be a weekend, it's not anymore, it's weekdays, and I think the next hack is the 24th, 25th of May. So that's at the Spurs ground. So they come along, so we start at 9 o'clock and we tell you what it's all about, all right? And we say, this is the way to go about a hack, for the newbies and things like that. About 9:30, we start with the challenge pictures. So 2 minutes a pitch, we say, so those challenge owners come along and say, come and work on my challenge, come and work in my team, because it's a really cool problem I'm trying to solve. So it's a bit of a sales pitch, right? It's like Dragon's Den, please come and work on my problem. And the NHS did that, and the lady called Jo Stanford did a brilliant job, and she got 5 teams working on one of her challenges, and one of those won sort of first prize. So at 10 o'clock-ish, we then say, right, we've presented to you the challenges, we've told you about the data, etc. Which one would you like to work on, and go and form some teams? And then it's chaos for the next 30 minutes, 35 minutes. Everybody's walking around, I don't know what they're doing, right, whatever. So we've got to try and shepherd them into some teams and say, what you're looking for. You don't want a team full of project managers because they can't code, can't do data, etc. You don't want a full sort of team full of data people because they don't understand the domain. So you need a blend, and that's what we do through the hack. We've got a really great network now because we've done a lot of these. We pull together data professionals, students as well, we get PhDs along, that sort of stuff, and we tie them up with your project professionals. So if you've got a good team, you can then get going. So they start to get going about 11:15, 11 o'clock, and then we say to them, pick a team lead and let's go. And then by about 1 o'clock, we say, right, have you got a plan? Have you broken out your couple of days? And then they start to go for it. And then they do problem decomposition, make sure they understand it. They probably split the team out. Some people's looking at, right, what the storage board's going to be. So a bit of right to left planning. They say, what's the storyboard for my pitch? And so they'd work all that out. And then they come together again about sort of 1:30, 2 o'clock and say, right, this is what we're going to do. And then they start to go through it, right? They start to pull the data into pieces. They start to conceptualize solutions. They do a bit of an MVP on a whiteboard or a wireframe or something like that. And then day 2, they come back. So in terms of day 1, right, the venue will close as soon as we get kicked out, especially if you rented it, right? Some people come to London and think they can sleep in the venue as well, right? They paid the 20 quid ticket to get in. We always charge for people to get in because we've got to put all the food on. There's a free bar in the evening. We always charge because if it's free, people sign up and don't sort of turn up, and then we put a skip full of food. You know, it's all binned, right? So we learn from that. So we charge 20 quid, and that goes to the British Red Cross for the Ukraine sort of appeal, right? So it's all for charity. So that money goes to charity. So it's a token payment just to make sure if somebody signs up, they're committing to come along. So day 2, right? So free bar in the evening. Day 2, they'd rock up, rejoin their team, and they then start to work through their solutions. About 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock time, the team will start to split. So the team will then split, and part of the team's working on the pitch and the presentation and the video that goes with it. So we start off in the early days that it would be a sort of pitch at the venue. We've stopped doing that now because there's so many teams involved. It takes you a long time to get through all those pictures, and people get bored and they start to sort of stop listening. So we video them all now. And so we say, right, we're going to finish about 5 o'clock. So the videos would start, they'd start to record some components of it. People are still hacking their solutions out. They're still doing the MVPs. They're still producing it, and it all comes together about 5, 6 o'clock. So we then set a deadline. It's either 7 o'clock that night or 10 o'clock the following morning. And the videos are all submitted. We take them in, and then we close the shutter. Right. So we close the shutter at 10 o'clock or 7 o'clock on that night, and then it goes to a judging panel. So we've got loads of people in the community. We've got something like 70 judges, I think, which we can choose from. And those judges, it's people like Andy Murray, who's the Exec Director of Major Projects Association. We've got Joe Jolly. Right, we've got a lot of people we can choose from and pull them in. So each person looks at 6 videos, and we would typically have, on a physical hack, we'd have 20 teams, maybe something like that. So each person will look at 6 videos. We then give people different 6 videos to look at. We pull all the scores together, and then we would assess them, right? And say, you know, who's won, who's come second, etc. And what we used to do was we used to award the prizes on that basis. Now, we stopped doing that recently because we've realised that there's some people who could turn up with a commercial product and win because, oh, look at my product, I've solved this problem with my commercial product, which is not fair, right? It's not fair. And there's people who's sort of professional at this, etc. So what we said is it's going to go through moderation. So we would pick 3 people in terms of judges, and last time it was Breeder Ryan and Andy Murray and somebody else. So those 3 people come along and they'd moderate the top 5 and pick the top 3 out of it. First prize gets £3,000, second prize gets £1,000, £600 and £400. Right, so there's £5,000 that goes through Amazon vouchers. So that's it basically. And then those people as well, it's not just winning the cash, they go away the glory as well, right? And for some people, it's a game changer. I've seen people get jobs, brand new jobs, off the back of winning the prize at a hack because they've got superpowers nobody else has got. Cool, isn't it?
It's awesome because this year it's actually quite apt, because for those that don't know who Spurs are, Tottenham Hotspur, Martin Carriston is fuming and spitting there because he's a Chelsea fan. They're, you know, one of the top sides, I guess, in the English Premiership. But it's very apt because that's one of the big clubs that go scouting for talent, and here you are providing talent, albeit a different sport, if we can call it that, at the Spurs ground. I mean, I haven't been to the day, as you know, but I've been to the networking night in between the 2 days, and it's absolutely amazing. Just the buzz from day one from everyone there, and they're, you know, you're feeding off that energy in the space. But talking of people, I know, and I admire you for this, Martin, because I've seen it firsthand, where you get challenged a lot when you giving a talk, or, you know, when you actually educating as well, the whole people and behavior and cultural side around data. And a lot of people are fearful around this whole notion of, well, if we make all data available, then blame games start to happen and stress levels increase. And, you know, what about the people? Are we forgetting about the people? What about circular economies? Are we, you know, taking people's jobs away and things like that? And I wonder if you could just sort of package, I guess, a bit of your response to the people side when it comes to data analytics, and what you're actually trying to achieve in that space as well. Because I know, having spoken to you, it's not all about the data. It's actually to improve what people do and experience on projects as well.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's spot on, Dale. I do get challenged a lot. I get challenged day in, day out. So as people say to me, this is not about data, it's going to humanize project delivery. And I fundamentally disagree with that. Right? You've got a lot of project professionals who've turned the handle on process. They would be a tool jockey, like a P6 jockey or something like that. They're not really adding much value, right? They spend the time reporting, and it's reporting on what happened 3 months ago. It's not what's happening now. It's because the system has got used to that. It's baked into the fabric of what we do as project professionals. Doesn't mean it's right, it's just baked in, right? So let's reimagine what that looks like. And if we do reimagine it, instead of looking backwards, we start to look forwards. And that's where the human being is really good, because you can take the data then and say, well, this is more likely to happen than this is going to happen. I can see some lead indicators. I've put some probes out there where I'm going to sense when something's going to go pear-shaped. You know, I know you spoke to Dave Snowden. I love what Dave Snowden's doing. So it's all about emergence, right? We should be managing emergence and looking for patterns in data, and that's a cool job. A cool job is not knocking out reports, what happened 3 months ago. That's something we all hate doing. So if we can use machines to get rid of that stuff that we hate doing, we'll then start to do the really exciting stuff, which is where you start to develop your superpowers. And a project professional has got superpowers who can see into the future and work out where to make your interventions, where to spend your risk money, you know, where you're going to hemorrhage cash, all that sort of stuff. Your salary is going to shoot up because you've got skills that nobody else has got. And then we're going to get to a situation in a few years' time, it's a battle of superpowers, you know, who's got the best team, the best skills, whatever. And that's not existing today. And that's a brand new skill set. That's a brand new set of people that doesn't exist today. And just imagine what that's going to look like. It's going to be phenomenal, right? A really exciting career. There's no such thing, you know, there's no career pathways for this at the moment, but there will be. You know, the task force is working on a skills framework for it. These people do not exist. And when I speak to project controls people, and those project controls people say to me, Martin, you misunderstand. What you need to do, you need to go and walk the construction site and understand what's going on, and only then do you really understand the project performance. And I say, I disagree. I've led a $1 billion contract. People tell you what they think you want to hear, not what the reality is. And then when I've got what I want to hear, I feed it to my boss, I tell him what he wants to hear, and then he goes and tells the client what he thinks the client wants to hear. So at every level, there's this Babel fish, which is twisting the truth, all right? With Project Data Analytics, there's a line of sight to the raw data, so there's no more manipulation of the truth. And if you are frigging the data, if you get the algorithms right, you can sense it that somebody's messing about with the data, which means then there's no more debates about where truth is, because you know where truth is because the data is accurate. Now, we're some way away from that, but there will be a situation, I think National Highways is starting to get to this, where they've got no debate about where ground truth is anymore. They're now debating, so what does that mean? And that's a brilliant place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other part for me thinking about it is that, you know, we have such a shortage of talent, right? So many projects happening at the moment, so many professionals that we don't have to deliver them. And the nice thing about this is that we're not relying on bums on seats, because, you know, it's actually scalable. As you say, you go and you solve a solution for one project, you can then go and solve a solution on another project, and it doesn't take you the same 40 hours a week or 60 hours a week or however long you're working during your week, because it is scalable. And that's the beauty about it. If we revert to the, I guess the current model of bums on seats, well, you only have 24 hours in a day. And so that you can't split that any way. So I for one am a fan. I guess I sit in the camp where, you know, I have heard before from various people that, you know, data analytics is going to become the new project controls. And I think we've had this conversation before, where I actually think controls was actually the first data analytics people around, because we've always looked at data. I think it just adds to our, I guess, our toolkit, you know, this additional capability and skill, as you call it, a superpower. And I believe that sort of thread as well. I don't know if it'll entirely change what we do. We'll still be looking at data, and we'll just be looking at it much faster speed in many more different dimensions and angles, and have a lot more insight when we do have that capability. But as you say, I think we are a bit away far from that. I just think that you are right. We are building, specifically here in the UK, a groundswell. I think a lot of people are starting to recognize now, actually, hang on, it's not just Mr. Paver there putting his head above the parapet. There's a lot of people beginning to look at this and going, there is definitely something here, and we need to start changing, you know, the whole views from, as we call it, the dinosaurs in the industry. And so those are just some of my comments, but I am keen to bring in Machine Gun Martin, Mini Martin, or whatever we're calling you today, Martin Curriston. Yeah, exactly.
Changes week to week.
Exactly. But on that note as well, gentlemen, I'm going to love and leave you and carry on with my my Weiss beer here in Germany. But yeah, have fun.
And Dale, just before you go, right? So I'm with you either next week or a few weeks' time, which is the intensive week for the apprenticeship, right? Is it worth you sharing that with some people about, you know, you are a seasoned project controls guy, right? You've been trained in this discipline, but you're about to swallow the red pill and come out the matrix and see the world in a different light.
Martin, I think I've already swallowed the red pill. I'm in the matrix, and I'm just trying to figure my way through it at the moment. I don't know if I can dodge bullets yet, but who knows? Maybe in 2 weeks' time I'll be able to dodge those bullets.
Cool. Excellent. Yeah,
Awesome,
great seeing you.
Have fun. Machine Gun Martin, over to you.
Cheers, Dale. I think my question is probably a follow-on from what Dale was asking there. So the hackathons have been a great success in terms of harnessing data, solving project issues. I absolutely love the health and safety app presentation from the last session. I was just saying how good it was to Dale and Val before you joined. I think my question is going to be, how is your company going to try and focus more on the soft skills and maybe sales skills for the types of products that you're the people are coming up with? Because I'm guessing the majority of the people with the superpowers between now and the next few years, they're going to be in the lower to middle echelons of the organization, maybe not quite have the confidence to be that real influencer. How, and using those skills, how would they kind of go about convincing some of the more Luddite senior leaders who maybe have walked the construction sites and just, you know, stonewall some of these things? Is there going to be a focus on the soft skills or really harnessing the data?
So in terms of the day that I do on the apprenticeship, right? So Dale and some of his colleagues join the apprenticeship, and I teach them for a day about what is Project Data Analytics, the way it's going to change the world, etc. As part of that, I tell them about all the challenges, because we teach people from about 50 different companies. We know what the challenges are day in, day out. We see what the obstacles are. It's IT, lack of management commitment. There's no money. It's not a priority. You're too busy doing your project stuff. Right? You're too busy chopping down trees to stop and sharpen the saw, and we've got a chainsaw. Right? So I see those problems, and they all need to be tailored for each organization, right? So at an individual level, you can do certain things. But what we're also doing, so the next hackathon, so the Spurs grounds, we've got a VIP event. So it's a great venue. So we've got the APM behind us, and we've got the Major Projects Association behind us. And they're going to run a roundtable event with a load of VIPs, which is talking about what can we do to accelerate the transition to data-driven project delivery. So instead of you trying to tackle it at a project level, let's try and tackle it at an industry level, right? So that's got at it, right? I've shuffed to bits about it. It's got Andy Murray, who's the Exec Director from the Major Projects Association, and it's got Professor Adam Bodison, who is the Chief Exec of the Association for Project Management. So they're coming along. I've just been told about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock today, that we've also got Nick Smallwood coming along, who is the Chief Exec of the Infrastructure Projects Authority, right? Which is the centre of UK sort of government for project delivery. Now, that's brilliant for us because we're right at the top now, right at the top of all the professions, the top of government, to start to move the dial about the thinking. If they come along to the hackathon and see what can be done in 2 days, we'll really inspire them. And we have some speakers on as well. So we have people talking about the Construction Data Trust, we have people talking about the Cross Government Working Group, etc. All of these things together as a network effect is we can show them the light, and they swallow the red pill and they come out of the matrix. The matrix is old style of project delivery, and see the world in a different light. And when you pop out of that matrix and you see you can do things differently, that's when the magic starts to happen. So I think the question is whether you battle it yourself or you battle it as a community. And we're battling it as a community, we'll win that over.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's what it's about. Hey, if you got that top level support, that's where it really starts to be powerful. Another thing I'm interested in, I along with Dale, I was at the evening session of the last hackathon, and I saw the real enthusiasm in the room. I'm just interested, has the demographic of between hackathon 1 and 14, has it changed? So is it mostly data analysts in the room, project managers, students, like rough percentages? What would be the most?
So we work really, really hard on that, right? If you've got a room full of project managers, it doesn't work. If you've got a room full of data scientists, it doesn't work.
Absolutely.
A room full of students, they've not got sort of domain experience. They've not got the life experience to be able to solve some of these problems. It needs a blend, right?
Sure.
But we work the network really, really hard. I've got guys in my team who are just pushing that all the time. And we go and target certain universities who's on this. We go and target certain data science networks and data analytics networks, etc. So we try and get a split of about 60-40. So 60% project professionals, 40% data analysts. And some of those are the more advanced apprenticeship sort of guys as well, where they can now start to code in Python, they can understand machine learning, right? They can do some of these things. So they then start to flip in the data science expertise as well. So they've got some skills.
Great.
So we aim for that sort of blend, 60-40. And if it goes much beyond that, it becomes a talking shop about, if we have to mix all these skills up, and we'll have some magic computer that's going to tell us what the risk is next week, and they don't really understand how to do it. So you need a blend of the two.
That's brilliant. That's really good. Just one more from me on the subjects. What would be your sales pitch to the people who are on the fence? They kind of understand it's the future, but they haven't really seen it in action yet. They're a little bit wary, concerns about all this company data being confidential, data being out in the open. How would you kind of pitch that to them?
So first of all, the company data is not in the open, right? So it's independently stewarded in a secure environment. So you would see an instance of that data based around the risk of that data, right? So the perception of, I'm just going to put my data out there and get embarrassed, and I'm going to show everybody what my profit levels are and where my delays are, that's not the reality, right? and we spent a lot of time working up the legal framework to sort that out. Right? So that's the first issue. And what's the second part of the question? I forgot.
So it was just the sales pitch to the people who were on the fence. You know, they kind of not just the confidentiality. It's just like, it's data is going to be more and more. It's going to happen, but you're not really seeing the benefits yet.
If you're a project controls guy, right, and you're a P6 jockey, great. You're earning good money. You're earning, if you're on a day rate, it's probably a good day rate. But when is that going to run out? You've got Emplon knocking on your door. You've got Nodes and Links knocking on your door. We're doing some stuff whereby if we can get a common work breakdown structure for a commercial new build, right, then I can practically automatically create the logic in the schedule, right? I know the foundations are built before you put the walls up, before you put the roof on, right? That's simplistic, but you know what the logic is in the schedule. So what is a planner and the scheduler going to do in the future once we get to this situation? It's coming, right? And there's so much money going into it. If you look at the investment in 2021 versus the investment in about 2019, I reckon it's gone up like 100-fold, right? There's a humongous amount of money going into this. So BuildNots has got 30-odd million in the last round. You think about Mplan, who's got money from Google Ventures, right? There's a lot of money going into this. And you look at Procore as well. It's got a market cap of 9 billion, right? So there's some big money in this because the prize of improving productivity is huge. So you can either stay old school and bet that nothing's going to change, which is fine. Some people will. Or you can say, this is going to pivot at some time. Do I want to be on that wave and ride that wave and be in front of my peers? Or do I want to risk becoming a bit obsolete? My skills are a bit rusty. If I'm working for a big consultancy, I can't sell myself out. I'm on the bench for too long. If you're on the bench for too long, you start to get exposed, right? So it's just a matter of, it's like in the old mills, when sort of manufacturing came along, there's just a new generation of stuff. It's happened time and time again through history. It's just another iteration of it. And yeah, everybody's going to lose their job. Robots are going to take control. No, they're not. There's going to be a new generation of work. It's always happened like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Martin, I got two Martins now. Martin Paver, that's exactly. I love the passion as well when you explain this. Obviously, beers help, but it's always lovely to have you here. I've got a few comments as well. Dale's not here to kind of defend himself, but I do disagree. He said something before, Martin. I'd love to get your comment on this. I don't think we have a. Sorry, he said we had a shortage in talent, and I don't think that's true. I don't think we have a shortage in talent, and I think it's something that you said before as well, Martin. It's kind of getting people to swallow the pill and recognize the projects for what they are. And data is a large part of it, always has been. And seeing that as an asset, not a wastage product, which is really interesting. The other thing I think, as you said quite rightly, the P6 jockey, which is a good term, I might steal that, is around people choosing the easy path. And we have this challenge now in major government projects, particularly in Australia as well, where they're getting paid a lot of good coin, Martin, to do very little on the project in terms of adding value, right? I'm sure they're doing good at their craft, but I agree. Every time something changes, and particularly technology as a catalyst, we all have to adapt. And that's been like that for a while now. So Dale wasn't here to listen to that, but he'll have to read back and have a view. The other thing I was thinking about was Bent sent out some interesting analysis on the 10 biases of projects, which I thought was pretty cool because I almost agreed with all of them. And have you seen those 10 biases? And my question, I guess, to frame it more aptly is, how do we stop data biases? Because we know that the idea of data and information and having that repository is to have a better angle on truth, right? Because if we can understand the true status of the project, then we may be able to circumnavigate or intervene on things that may affect the future of the project. How do we keep data honest is my question to you, Mr. Martin.
So this is where it gets really cool, right? So there's not 10 biases. I think it's something like 183. So if you just Google on Wikipedia, the bias codex, right? There's a load of them, and I teach it on the bit on the apprenticeship, right? I teach them about that and say, so what will we do in terms of using advanced project data analytics to get over some of those biases, right? Now, if you've got a schedule and somebody's manipulating the data, you should be able to use a data science to say, there's been a change, right? I can see there's been an intervention here where somebody has manipulated the data. Now, if you've done that, and back to Ben Pluvier's stuff, right? So Ben's saying, if you are strategically misrepresenting a project, that is borderline fraud, right? Now, we all sign a code of conduct. So with the APM, you know, if you're a fellow with the APM or a chartered project professional, you sign a code of conduct that says you've got your integrity, your professionalism, etc. If you breach that and you are manipulating data, then you should be found out for it, right? And if you found out and you're leaving this forensic data plume, then you're going to be held accountable. Now people say, oh, that's really bad, Martin, you're going to scare everybody off from using data because you can go to jail, etc. It's like, it's just a transition point, right? I'm a chartered engineer and a chartered project professional. I can't go and frig the data in engineering and the building falls down on my head, right? I go to jail. So why shouldn't I go to jail in project delivery? It's just an ethics thing, right? So I can set up the data pipelines that starts to tell me about the integrity of the data. So I can tell, so if you're a risk manager, I can tell if you're right most of the time or not, right? So are your issues coming straight into your issues register, or do they go through your risk register first, right? That's just simple. I can then say, in terms of a peer set of the way that risks are described, are you any good at describing risks? And if you're not, right, it probably needs intervention, it needs a bit of coaching, development, whatever. So I can now get forensic performance of my entire squad. I can get my team. Now you do it in football, so why not do it in project delivery? That's coming. That's all possible today. There's bits of software that can do it. We'd like to open source a lot of that stuff and start to give it away, right? So we would then get to a situation where these biases, and you've got to look at the different biases, right? Is it because somebody is bad with their estimates, right? So they're always sort of optimism bias in there. I can pick that up in the data really easy. Is that, you know, you told me it was going to take 3 months, it always takes 6 months. You told me it was going to cost this, it always costs that. And I can see that you're always wrong, right? Whereas somebody else who's a bit more pragmatic, I can see, no, he's probably right 40% of the time. I want project professionals in my team. I think Jeff Bezos says this. I want people in my team who are right most of the time, right? So if you've got a right most of the time indicator, then that starts to drive out your bias. Now, there is bias in the data in terms of, for instance, a lot of project managers on construction sites are male, right? So you've got a bias against females in the construction site. Now you need an intervention in the data so you can weave that out, right? So there is a biased data set. You can't get around that at the moment. You can't just say, right, I'm going to assume it's 50%, so it's all different, whatever. We need to work towards that, and that will drive the interventions, that will drive the leveling, and that will drive sort of all these issues about diversity and things like that.
Yeah, no, that's great. I agree with you. I agree with you there. I also just pivoting on that, I guess the measures of success for projects is slightly changing now with, I guess, a lot more, particularly in the younger generation, and governments obviously picking this up around sustainability and the environment. And I guess we're always drawn back to the iron triangle and controls as the measures of success. And this is something that we've had many chats on the podcast about, and I'm sure you've had many challenges as well. Is that the most apt measure for success using data, or do we have other ways now? Because I've talked to Greg Lawton as well from Nodes and Links around carbon capturing construction projects as part of that unique endeavor for metrics that matter. Is there anything new we should be measuring in terms of success of projects?
I disagree with this carbon capture stuff, right? I think it's a fad about going carbon neutral. Is it carbon capture, right? That's not it's not the factor we should be measuring, right? It's the easy thing to capture is carbon capture, right? Now, if we look at waste has got a huge amount of carbon plume with it, but we're not capturing it because we're just looking at the embedded carbon in concrete or something like that, right? It's the easy things to measure. but we should be looking at the overall system effects. And I was talking to a chap from the Environment Agency today, Jonathan Williams, brilliant guy, and Jonathan said there's some carbon calculator that says his emissions are 10 tons per year, so he's like spot on where he should be, right? He's proud of his carbon stuff. He says, and then he looks at the project he's been working on, and that is something like 1 million tons of carbon. So as project professionals, we can have a significantly more impact on our carbon footprint through the way we are delivering projects than the way we are just looking at the basics of carbon capture, right? It's all about the efficiencies with logistics, the amount of waste that's coming out of projects, the overspend and things like that, because overspend tends to relate to wasted effort or wasted material or things like that, right? So all of that is costing money, it's costing carbon, etc. So it's too blunt a tool. So it's a good stepping stone, but it's too simplistic. And we need to aim higher. So the world's going to be on fire in about 3 years' time, I said the other day, right? So we're getting to the point of no return. We need to go for this a lot quicker than what we're going for at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think there's enough ambition out there. I don't think there's enough urgency. We need to change that. It's just not good enough.
No, 100%. I think you're right. I think there's, again, I think it's a stepping stone. I kind of like the idea you talked about before with the hackathon. You know, we're kind of servicing solutions for specific problems, but it's kind of part of a bigger challenge, which is this kind of the anatomy of the project, right? You know, you go to the doctor and the doctor feeds that symptom rather than looking at the whole body. But now they are doing that. They're looking at the problem as a holistic. Okay, do you have any other symptoms? Because they're connected in some way, right? And I think it might have been Joe Lucas that talked about the mycelium of projects and networks, and definitely Dave Snowden talked about this informal network of understanding. And I think the great work that you're doing in the UK, we want to spread. So, you know, it's kind of, I'll steal the TED talk, you know, spreading good ideas, but I want to know, how do we make this global, Martin? From your perspective, how do we get Martin Pavers in America, the US, who are massive contributors to this, how do we get them in China? How do we get them in these big manufacturing areas where I would agree with you, there are a lot of wastage and it's just not, I guess, on the forefront of their societal outcomes. I know in UK, you guys are definitely ahead in this space. How can we all contribute?
It's really hard, you know, it's really hard. So the hacks, for instance, right, cost you a load of money to put them on, right? Load of money. And it's not just the venue, right? You've got to pull the hack solutions together, right? That takes effort and time. You've then got to go and clean the data up, because if you don't clean the data up, there's GDPR issues in there. Somebody's going to get done for it, right? And if it's you as a hack organizer, you've got insurance for that, etc. Right? So there's loads of issues associated with running a hack. Now I can do it because it's part of my business model. I get apprentices along and I get paid to train the apprentices and stuff. So it's an ecosystem approach. Now we can only do that in the UK because we've got the apprenticeship scheme. It's really hard to do it in America where you've not got it and you're just expecting somebody to bankroll the hack, etc. So you need the ecosystem. And I think once we start to get this going and we start to demonstrate the benefits, I think that's coming. I reckon that's going to be towards the end of this year, maybe next year, we will demonstrate this at scale and we can start to quantify those benefits. So I'm working with an organisation at the moment, a big organisation who's got some big projects on, and saying, can we do shadow running on project controls? All right? So you do a traditional system and you bring in an advanced data analytics approach. If we can do that and we can start to measure A/B testing, right, and just say that this is X% better than the previous one, that's the inflection point. And I think the problem at the moment is it's driven by vendors. It's not necessarily driven by the overall ecosystem and the community. And if we can get to the community to evidence some of this benefit, that's when we really go fast. So that's why I'm a big fan of a community-driven approach, which opens the doors to the clever stuff on the vendors. The vendors should not be competing in the dashboardy space, because just open source stuff, right? It's configuration, Power BI and stuff like that. We shouldn't be playing in that space. We should be putting investments into the clever stuff, or you put the investments into aligning the data with the problem statements you talked about. So you talked about the doctor, you know, understanding it as a body. What we're trying to do is get to a project level ontology. And I think we'll crack that in the next probably 18 months, I think there will be a project level ontology coming out of the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So that's linking all these problem statements. If you can look into the future and say, if I could solve that problem, this, that, and the other, and align the data to it, I reckon 18 months time we'll have that.
That's awesome. And I really do think you're right. You do need that ecosystem of support. You know, you do need, I guess, some guidance and intervention by the government to incentivize people to be part of it. And I think it's where a lot of uni students are getting to that point. But as well, we got to make construction sexy. I think everyone's forgot that we need young people in this industry. By the way, we can't all do it. And we are finding, at least in Australia, that a lot of people are kind of shying away from construction because, one, it's hard. I guess the environment doesn't necessarily support development in the way that it should. It's a bit behind the eight ball when it comes to data and recognizing some of these new skills like data science, right, Martin? And I think that kind of damages people. So they come out of university with these kind of newfangled skills, a lot of energy, right? That's the time where you want to harness people when they're starting their careers out. They want to make a mark. They want to do some good things. And then we pull them into a project. We give them a whole bunch of spreadsheets and ridiculous processes. They say, why am I here? And then they leave 12 months or less later. And we're finding that churn is quite big in the construction market. I'd love to get some numbers on that. So if anyone does have them, send them out to us. But I think there's an element of humanizing around that, right? If we want to go back to why data is important to projects, I think it is important to projects because if we don't start moving with the times and adapting and adopting, yes, there's carbon and there's other impacts like cost and time. But what about the next generation who's meant to be making these projects better, who are meant to be looking at those responsible project management methodologies that we're talking about? And I think you're doing a great contribution and a great service, you and your team. I know you've got a bit of a team behind you. There's a lot of heroes in that group. And it is a grind, as you said. I've got one more question for you, Mr. Martin, and then we'll probably move to our special feature, as you know. This one is around the data itself. So if we go full steam ahead, actually 2 questions. I'm going to break it up. First one is the why, because I always start with why. Martin, why are you individually, why are you so passionate about this? Where does it come from?
30 years of delivering projects and realizing that we keep making the same mistakes time and time again. And when you understand the principle of machine learning, right? Machine learning is saying, let's learn from the data so we can predict the future. And that's what we do through the lessons learned process and repeatedly fail, right? So why I'm passionate about it is because we can move the dial, right? And it's not moving the dial a little bit. This is transforming multiple professions, right? It's not about project delivery. It's not about P3M. It's not about project controls. It's about all the project delivery. We can move the dial on this, right? And as an individual, why you're here, right? And for me, I feel this is a calling, right? I could sell out tomorrow and go and sit on the beach for the rest of my life and it's a calling. Is that I feel that, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity where we can move the dial on something so phenomenal that enables us to build more hospitals and to accelerate the transition, sort of energy transition and things like that, right? There's so much we can do at pace. We will change the world together. Now, I could go and spend all the money being a vendor or spend all the money being a consultant, whatever. I'd rather do this because, it's a calling. It's a calling. And I think there's a lot of people in my team feel that as well. And they're very confused. A lot of people are confused about my business model, where you're going to give it all away. And we give it all away because it's the only way we're going to accelerate it. And it's hard, right? It's an hard business model. It's not easy to make it all work, but it's doing the right thing, and that's something we really, really believe in.
That's great to hear. And I'm sure the listeners would love to know about this. And I guess my final piece of questioning would be around, how do people get involved? A lot of people listening to this, maybe sitting in project controls, starting out in project controls, or maybe they're 30-year delivery guys and they're sick of the way things are happening. How do they get involved, Martin, with you? Or how do they make this same level of contribution and legacy to evolving our projects? What's your advice there?
There's 3 or 4 levels, right? So it's a life cycle we've been through. So we start off with the meetups. So just Google London Project Data Analytics meetup. And we run the meetups twice a month, and we get a load of people on, a bit like your podcast, really, but it's a bit more presentation-y, whereas yours is more conversational, right? We do have panel sessions, but now that's a great opportunity to dip your toe in the water. We've got loads of videos, so go to Projected Success YouTube website. You'll find a load of videos on there for the meetups. So that's the starter pack, right? And then once you start to get into it, and you want a bit of hands-on experience, then get involved in a hack. So we've got the physical hack. So if you're in London, then come along to the London hack. It's 20 quid to get in. You get 10 times that back, just food and beer and everything like that, and prize money and things like that. So you get a lot more than that back. That's just an entry ticket just to make sure that you turn up, right? And that goes to the British cross-Ukrainian appeal as well, right? So that's not a money-making venture. The hack's not a money-making venture. It's to get the movement going, right? That's why we're doing it. The next level up from that, so you start off saying, what's Project Data Analytics about? Oh, I'm starting to get it. Is you then go to hack and you realize that it's not as hard as it looks, and you're really inspired. And then the next step is to say, right, I need to get trained up on this. So you can then join the apprenticeship, and Dale's sort of just joined recently, and some members of his team's joined. And the apprenticeship, apprenticeship in old school was you're 18 and you left school, you don't know what to do with your life, so you become an apprentice sort of bricklayer, right? It doesn't work like that in the UK anymore. So the UK's productivity was falling behind France and Germany. So the UK government said, we're going to tax businesses with a pay bill of more than, I think, £3 million. We're going to tax you at 0.5%. And we're going to sit that in this thing called a levy account. So that is to train your people on lifelong learning, right? When you've done a degree in engineering or project management or something like that, you should not spend the next 40 years sort of riding off the wave of that degree, because technology is always moving. You've got to be keeping up with it. So what government's trying to do is to invest in that training. So basically that levy account is sat there, it's taxed basically, and if you don't spend your tax, then it's lost, right? They lose that training account. So we've got guys, one guy's 60, we've got a director from Gleeds who's on this, we've got a fresh starter from National Highways, straight out of school. We've got a full blend of people from 60 down to like 18. We've got directors all the way down to like basic grade. So I just say, open your eyes to the potential. The world is changing. You look at your supermarket. 15 years ago, you went in the supermarket to buy some stuff. Now it's all data driven. They know exactly what you're going to buy. They're pushing stuff at you, they're pushing promotions at you, they're putting the right food based on the weather, right? It's all based around data. In project delivery, we're 15, 20 years behind. It's going to change. It's going to change at pace.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And, thank you for your insights on the project hack and your kind of your bigger vision or wider vision. And we'll keep having you on the show, Martin, because again, this thing is evolving. As you said, there's going to be some inflection point. It's coming, as you said. I look forward to that day. And always thank you for your time. I know we pulled you out of a social gathering, and I appreciate you spending a bit more time talking about what's happening in your world. Martin, over to you for the fiver. That's Martin Kuriston, by the way.
Thanks, Val. Yeah, thanks a lot, Martin. That was great. It was a real good sales pitch for what you're doing. Lastly, we've got a little feature. It's called Fiverr. It's 5 quick fire questions all about yourself. So if you're ready, we can give it a go.
Let's go.
Okay, number 1: steak, seafood, or salad?
Steak.
What are the 3 must-have behaviors you look for in successful project teams?
Collegiate working. So team players, and I think drive and determination, that's 2, but I think it's the same thing. Drive and determination.
Good, thank you. What's the one piece of advice for people new to the project profession?
Go big or go home. Right? Think bold. Yeah, think bold. Yeah.
Nice. If you could go back to one moment of your life, what would it be and why?
My first child being born, because it was the most special part of my life.
Oh, it's really nice. And finally, which superpower would you choose to have for a day and why?
all these project delivery superpowers because we can change the world.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot. Back to you,
Thank
Martin.
you. Thanks, Martin. Look, Martin, that's all the time we have. Unfortunately, I'd love to stay and chat even more, and I hope I can get over to London now that the COVID restrictions have eased. I would love to be at a hackathon. I think I can contribute to this massive event that you are kicking off.
Yeah, come on, Val. Get yourself there.
Absolutely, mate. And a beer and a palmy.
And I'll give you a free ticket and I'll buy some beer. Yeah, come over.
Oh, there we go. That's all I need, mate. That's all I need. Well, look, thank you for your time, Martin Paver. Is there any other final thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I'd say, the world's changing. We can make a difference. The project professional holds the keys to all this climate stuff. Ukraine's going to need fixing, right? It's down to us, right? We can make a difference, but we can't make a difference by reading a Prince 2 manual, right? We've been reading that manual for the last 20 years, and it's not moved the dial. We need to think differently. Go bold, think differently, and get on board the Project Data Analytics bus because it's exciting, right? It's a great career, and if I was a youngster today, it's a phenomenal chance to change the world. Cool.
Yeah, fantastic. I completely agree with you also, Martin. Martin, Kirsten, any final thoughts from you?
No, thanks a lot again for your time. It's really interested, and yeah, just get on board now. The industry's changing. Join it.
Excellent. Thanks, cool. Martin squared. Well, folks, that's all the time we have for. I hope you like what you've heard. You can pay it forward by sharing a link to the episode on your favorite social media. A massive, massive thank you to Mr. Martin Paver. Thank you all for listening. Till next time, we say stay safe, be disruptive, and have fun doing it. From me, Dale, and the Martins, it's bye for now.